Thank you for choosing Glove Genie's glove knitting tutorial. My name is Kyoko and I will be guiding you step by step through making the knotted glove design. Make sure you've downloaded the PDF pattern, as I'll be referring to it throughout the tutorial. The pattern comes in 6 sizes. I'll be making the women's extra small, which fits a palm size width of 8 cm. Be sure to measure the widest part of your palm and don't add any extra ease. The finished glove includes 1 cm of built-in ease. The yarn you'll need is Jamieson's of Shetland Spindrift. Choose any color you want. It'll be very hard because there are so many amazing colors to choose from. But for this pattern, the sample is made in Stonehenge. You also need stitch markers, a piece of waste yarn to hold the stitches, and a cable needle, and also a yarn needle for finishing. For the needles, you'll need 2.5mm needles for the cuff, 2.75 needles for the main part of the gloves. The pattern refers to using double-pointed needles, which I usually do, but in this tutorial, you'll see me using circular needles with the magic loop method. I wanted to share something extra that you might not have tried before. That said, please feel free to use double-pointed needles if you prefer them. I'll be working with Addi Turbo 80 cm circular needles, which has been my all-time favorite needles. I know it's tempting to dive right into knitting, but take your time to knit a tension swatch and adjust your needle size if needed. Getting the right tension is one of the best ways to make sure your gloves fit just right. Once we're happy with our tension, I'm going to work on the cuff and I'm going to cast on. For this video tutorial, I'll show you how to use the magic loop method instead of double-pointed needles. You can use double-pointed needles as written in a pattern, but for the purpose of this video tutorial, I wanted to show you a different technique as an option. The pattern states, using smaller double-pointed needles, cast on 50, 52, 56, 58, 64 or 66 stitches evenly. You can use any cast on method as long as it's not too tight or too loose. So I'm making women's extra small size, which is the second size up. So I'm going to cast on 52 stitches. I personally like the crochet cast on method because the cast on and cast off edges look identical. And this can be really helpful if you want a consistent looking edge, especially if you later decide to make your gloves into fingerless gloves. To do a crochet cast on, first make a slip knot. Place the knitting needle on top of the working yarn. Insert the crochet hook into the loop and hold the yarn in your left hand, with the crochet hook in your right. Bring the crochet hook in front of the needle, catch the yarn and pull it through the loop on the hook to create a new stitch over the needle. Bring the yarn behind the needle and repeat the process. Bring the hook in front of the needle, pull it through the loop, bring the yarn back and repeat. Continue this process until you have the desired number of stitches to cast on. I'm casting on 52 stitches, and with the crochet cast on, the 52nd stitch or the last stitch will be on the crochet hook. So I will make 51 stitch and going to place that last loop onto the needle like this. So now I have 52 stitches total on the needle. So here, with your double-pointed needles, you would usually distribute these stitches evenly over 3 or 4 needles. But because we are working on magic loop method, we will slide the stitches down onto the cord section of the circular needle. Then you'll divide the stitches so that half are on one side of the cord. So For glove knitting purpose, this will be the palm and the other half on the opposite side for the back of the hand. So because I'm working on the left glove, I'm going to count 26 stitches, which is the number of stitches for the palm side before you place a stitch marker. This is stitch number 26, and I want to split the work here between stitch 26 and 27. Pull the cable out between those stitches. Like this, gently pull the cord through. So that now you have a loop of cable coming out between the stitches. One important thing to remember with the magic loop method is to make sure your cast on edge is not twisted. This is crucial for working in the round. So now we have a loop on this side. And now pull back the needle out and rotate your work to the left so you're ready to knit as usual. Double check that your stitches are not twisted. And now you're ready to join and begin knitting in a round. In this case, I'm working a 1x1 rib, which is knit 1 and purl 1 rib. When you make a first knit stitch, make sure you pull the yarn a little bit so that the first stitch and then the last stitch is nicely joined. When you reach the end of the first side, turn your work. And pull the working needle back into place. Pull the other needle tip so it's ready to knit with, and you're ready to knit the second half of the round. Once you get the hang of it, magic loop becomes really fast. Just make sure the needle is ready, pull it through and keep going. Continue working the cuff in ribbing until you reach your desired length. Once you have reached the desired cuff length, we're ready to increase the stitches for the main part of the gloves. The pattern says work in pattern, so that is 1x1 rib, and make 1 and repeat from the start how many ever times more pattern to end. So in my case, I will do knit 1, purl 1, 4 stitches and make 1 stitch and repeat this 10 times more. Make 1 can be done however you prefer. I tend to do make 1L, left slanting, because I'm used to do M1L. To do make 1L, identify the strand of yarn between the stitches where you want to make an increase. Insert the right needle from the back of the work and lift the strand up. Then place it onto the left needle without removing the right needle. Then knit this stitch. This will increase 1 stitch with the twist leaning to the left. After the increase, you should have 59, 63, 67, 73 or 79 stitches in total. So now I've made an increase. The pattern says place marker after 24, 26, 28, 30, 32 or 34 stitches. So in my case after 26 stitches and after 27 stitches. Because I'm working in a magic loop method, I already have 26 stitches on this side. So I don't really need to place a marker here, otherwise the marker will keep slipping off when I turn to the other side. So all I need to do is to place a stitch marker after the 27th stitch on the other side. Between the beginning of the round and this stitch marker, I will be working the thumb gusset increases. And because this is the left glove, I'll be working this side in stockinette stitch with the thumb gusset increase on this side, and the other side will have the cable pattern, and that's why there are 26 stitches here and more stitches on the other side, because the tension is tighter in the cable section. Now I'm going to change to a larger 2.75mm needle to work the main part of the pattern. Chart A for the left glove will show you the pattern, including the thumb gusset increases up to the base of the little finger. You can work the pattern using chart A. The thumb gusset increase is also described in the written instructions. It says thumb gusset increase round, knit to marker, slip marker, M1L, knit to marker, make 1R, slip marker, pattern to end. Since I'm using magic loop method, I will knit to the end of the first side of the needle, which is where the marker would be placed. Then make one left. As before, to do M1L, identify the horizontal strand between stitches and pick this strand up and knit through the back loop. Knit to marker. Right now there is only one stitch to knit before the marker. M1R, identify the strand of yarn between the stitches where you want an increase and pick up this strand from the front and knit this stitch. And this will create a twisted stitch that leans to the right. And then slip the marker and work the cable chart.
Slip marker.
1, 2, purl, twist stitch,
twist stitch,
purl. So here we're ready to make the cable for back. To do a cable for back, slip the next 2 stitches onto a cable needle.
Place the next 2
and
stitches
hold it at the back of your work.
On a cable needle.
Knit the next
hold
2
it
stitches.
Back, knit 2.
And then knit the 2 stitches from the cable needle.
Knit 2 from the cable needle.
For a cable for front,
then
slip the next 2 stitches onto a cable needle and hold it at the front. Knit the next 2 stitches.
F.
Then knit the 2 from the cable needle. Alright, so let's do the cable for back now. Slip the next 2 stitches onto a cable needle and hold it at the back. Knit 2 stitches, then knit the 2 from the cable needle.
knit 2.
And now the small needle is no longer in use, so we will carry on with 2.75mm needles following chart A until you reach the base of the thumb.
And so you can
So I've now reached the point where I'm going to separate out the thumb gusset stitches. You can see the cable pattern is coming along really nicely. The pattern says continue working in pattern to marker, remove marker, make 1 using the loop method, place the next 17 stitches or 17, 19, 19, 21, 21 stitches onto a piece of waste yarn, slip marker, continue working pattern to end. So as before, since we're using the magic loop method, that just means knitting to the end of the first side of the loop, which is this point here, where the marker would go if you were working in a round, as the pattern suggests. If you look closely, you'll see this section is where the thumb gusset shaping has been happening. And so now we need a piece of waste yarn. I'm threading a needle with waste yarn and slipping all the thumb gusset stitches onto it. And the pattern says slip marker, which is here. I actually took it off during filming a tutorial earlier and I forgot to put it back. So just imagine it's here. And this stitch marker indicates the beginning of the back of hand, i.e. the cable part. Next, we're going to make one stitch using the loop cast on method, and that's simply creating a loop on the needle. Everyone has their own way of doing this, but I make a loop like this. So I make a loop, insert the needle into it and pull. And now we've made one new stitch between the palm side and the back of the hand. From here, we just continue working in pattern all the way to the end. I finished chart A, but the glove wasn't quite tall enough, so I added a couple of extra round by continuing the cable pattern, and now the height looks just right. The rest of the gloves will be worked in stockinette stitch, so we can forget about the cable pattern from now on. Next up, we're going to make the little finger. The pattern says work the first 6, 6, 7, 7, 8, 8 stitches, and place the next several stitches onto a piece of waste yarn, removing all markers, and make one except for the largest size using the loop method, and knit to end. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to slip some stitches onto waste yarn now, so we can isolate and work just the little finger. Now we're going to use the loop cast on again to create stitches for the little finger gusset. It's the same method we used earlier for the thumb gusset. Okay, so I'm making a loop cast on now. Just make a loop like this and tighten it onto the needle. If you're working with double pointed needles, it's helpful to have a couple of stitches already on the needle before you start the loop cast on, and that makes it a bit easier to manage. So for example, if I were casting on 6 stitches at the very beginning, I'll do the first 4 stitches onto the first double pointed needle, then 2 stitches onto the second, then I'll do the loop cast on. And this makes the loop cast on a little bit easier and more stable. The rest of the stitches for this finger will all be worked in stockinette stitch. So I've knitted up to the right length of the little finger, and now I'm going to decrease the stitches. The pattern says to knit 2 or 3 together, or really you can use any 1 stitch decrease. I often prefer slip slip knit. It just feels a little gentler on my fingers. Then break the yarn. Thread it onto a yarn needle and weave it through the remaining stitches, being careful not to twist them. Pull to close the gap at the tip, and I always love this part. Then insert the needle down through the center of the fingertip. So the yarn end is tucked neatly inside the finger and ready to weave in later. If you look at the level of the fingers, there is a bit of height between them. And that's what we are going to work on now. To do this, first put the stitches back onto the needles. Join in a round. I like to leave the yarn tail on the outside so it's easy to weave in later. Where we made the loop cast on, we're going to pick up 2 stitches from the base of the little finger, which is right here. It doesn't matter too much if there is a small gap here at the moment, as we'll weave it in later and it will close up. Here I've tightened the first stitch just to make sure it's nice and neat. Then continue working several rounds. Okay, so I'm going to make the ring finger. The pattern says work the first few stitches, so in my case 6 stitches, and then place the next 33 stitches onto a piece of waste yarn. Make 1 stitch, except for the last 2 sizes, using the loop method, work to end. So let's go ahead and do that. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then place the next 32 stitches onto a piece of waste yarn. And then make a loop. And knit in a round until you reach the desired length of the finger. Time to decrease the stitches over 2 rounds as per the pattern. Like I mentioned before, you can do any decrease method that you like. For the last 3 stitches, you can either do knit 3 together or do a slip 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 knit to finish. Then cut the yarn, thread it through a yarn needle, and pull it tight to close the gap. Tuck the yarn inside like before so that we can weave in the ends later. I've now finished the ring finger. Okay,
So now we're ready
so now
to make
we're
the
ready
middle
to
finger.
make the middle finger. The pattern says place the first 7 stitches for my sides and the last 9 stitches onto the needles and leave the rest of the 17 stitches onto a piece of waste yarn. So let's go ahead and do that. Place the first 7 stitches,
2, and then place the last 9 stitches. So we're gonna count 2, 4.
and place the last 9 stitches.
Oh, but please be quiet. 9.
Then carefully remove the
then-
waste yarn
Just remove.
where you inserted the needle.
This waste yarn. Oh, but don't look it because Papa needs to come back home. Stitches.
And then we'll leave the
for
rest
the
of these
index
stitches
finger
for
later
the
on.
index finger later on.
Join yarn
Join
again,
your yarn again with the tail
leaving
outside.
the yarn at the front, and
and knit 7 stitches.
knit 7. And
Then make 1 stitch
Loop.
using a loop. Again,
make
if
one
you're
stitch
working with
using a
double
loop.
pointed needles, it's helpful to have a couple of stitches already on the needle before you start the loop cast on. Then turn your work
And then turn.
pick up 1 stitch from the base of the ring finger. And knit in a round until you reach the desired length of the finger. Now I'm going to decrease the stitches at the top of the middle finger by working 2 decrease rounds. And then thread the yarn through the loops to close the top. And that's the middle finger done. And now we're going to make the
first
index finger. Start by placing the stitches back onto the circular needle, about half on each side, to work with the magic loop method. Join new yarn. Then pick up one stitch from the base of the finger. Continue knitting. Now I'm going to work the 2 decrease rounds like I did for the other fingers. You can use any 1 stitch decrease. Break the yarn. Thread it into a yarn needle. Through the remaining loops. And pull tight to close the top. And insert the needle inside the finger to finish off later. We're now going to work on the thumb. Place all the stitches onto the circular needle, about half on each side, to work with the magic loop method. Pick up one stitch from the base of the thumb, right here. And knit until the thumb is the length you want. Now I'm going to reduce the top of the thumb. Like I mentioned before, you can do any decrease method that you like. Right, so the main portion of the glove is now done. And we are going to weave between the fingers to close any gaps. And you can see why I left these yarn tails hanging out. And now we're going to use them to weave up the gaps. If you're knitting gloves for yourself, it's best to wear them during this process. Start at the base of the thumb. Use the yarn tail to weave it through the gap, following the stitch pattern so that it looks quite natural. It all looks really nice and tidy now. There's no gap left. Repeat this process for the base of all the other fingers. It doesn't have to be exact as long as it looks natural. You see, there are no more gaps here. And now go ahead and do the same for all the fingers. Now that all the gaps are nicely closed between the base of the fingers, the only thing left is to weave in the yarn tails inside the glove. Turn the glove inside out and finish the ends one by one. Here's the tail from the cast on edge at the cuff. I sometimes don't even bother tying it off. As long as it's nicely tucked in, I think it's fine. I'm not turning the fingers yet because I want to finish weaving in the yarn at the base of the fingers methodically. I'll go ahead and finish weaving in this end. Sometimes I just tuck in without tying. That way, if I want to make changes later, it's easier. If you tie it, it becomes harder to modify. There's no right or wrong in knitting, and that's the amazing things about it. I just go back and forth, but I don't tighten it. Once I finished weaving in at the base of the fingers, then I finish off the tip of the fingers. Often I don't even finish off completely. Sometimes I want to turn the glove into fingerless glove later, so I just snip it a little and leave it. Repeat the same for all the fingers. the very end, lightly block the glove with a steam iron. Alright, this completes the glove. So here are the finished gloves. For the right glove, I won't repeat the whole video, it will be too long. It's essentially the same process as the left glove, but do take care to make sure that the cable pattern comes first before the thumb gusset increases. So refer to chart A, right glove in a pattern. The positioning is flipped compared to the left glove. So double check where the cable section and thumb gusset sit in the round. Everything else, including stitch counts and shaping, follows the same principles. Just a quick tip, when I block the gloves, I don't block the cuff so that it stays nice and stretchy. You can see the gaps between the fingers have completely disappeared and it all looks neat and natural. And that brings us to the end of the tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe learned something new along the way. If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to email me. And thank you very much for watching.